You know the Sunday scaries, right?
Uh,
The sun goes down, the weekend is officially slipping away, and you just get that heavy, unspoken dread setting in.
Oh, yeah, just dreading the inbox, the commute, all those Monday meetings.
Exactly. I mean, it is a feeling we universally associate with adults, just grinding away in corporate life. But
Yeah.
but what if the most intense workplace burnout isn't actually happening to adults in high rises?
Right, what if it's happening to, like, third graders?
Yes. Today, we're looking at why Monday mornings are turning into literal battlefields for kids. We are talking about the tears,
Yeah.
the intense negotiations, sudden unexplained illnesses, and just full-blown meltdowns just to avoid walking through those school doors.
And, I mean, it creates this incredibly stressful dynamic at home.
Yeah.
Parents watch this happen week after week, and, well, they're left paralyzed, really.
Yeah, totally.
They're caught between wondering, like, are we doing something fundamentally wrong as caregivers? Or is my kid just being defiant?
And that tension right there is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. So we're pulling from some highly detailed clinical guidance on pediatric anxiety and this phenomenon known as school refusal.
Which is such a fascinating clinical term for it.
It really is. And to anchor this clinically, we are actually pairing those insights with program details from a really comprehensive K-12 mental health initiative currently operating across the entire state of Georgia. It's called MentalSpace School.
Yeah, so we get to examine both the micro and the macro here. On one end, we have the granular household level behavioral patterns, what actually drives a child to refuse school.
Right.
And on the other end, we have this massive systemic case study in Georgia showing how public health infrastructure can actually intervene in those household patterns.
So our mission today is to really decode the root mechanics of that Monday morning meltdown, understand how to interrupt the cycle before it morphs into chronic absenteeism, and explore how this state-level systemic solution is actually functioning on the ground. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because if you are a parent or a guardian sitting at home, assuming your child's Sunday night meltdown is just random or maybe purely manipulatively, well, the clinical sources paint a very different picture.
Oh, completely different. They outline a four-step timeline that is honestly almost eerily predictable.
It really is. So it typically starts on Sunday afternoon with this subtle withdrawal. Right?
Yeah, the child just stops engaging in the weekend activities they were literally just enjoying.
Right, they just shut down. And then by Sunday evening, the physical complaints start, like the stomach aches, the headaches.
Mm-hmm. And by Sunday night, that physical discomfort compounds into actual insomnia.
Yeah. And then Monday morning, the sun comes up, they're entirely depleted, and boom, you get the explosive meltdown.
What's fascinating here is the underlying neurology driving that specific timeline. Because, we tend to assume anxiety is strictly a cognitive process.
Like just a loop of worried thoughts in your head.
Exactly. But for children, particularly those who haven't developed the vocabulary to articulate complex emotional distress, well, anxiety speaks through the body long before it forms words.
Right.
When a child faces the prospect of school, their nervous system begins functioning like a hypersensitive smoke detector.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it doesn't know the difference between burnt toast and a house fire. It just rings the alarm.
So the brain is essentially flooding the body with cortisol, the stress hormone, which triggers an actual physiological response.
Yes.
Like it restricts non-essential functions like digestion. So that means when a kid says their stomach hurts on a Sunday night, their digestive system is literally cramping up to prepare for a fight or flight scenario.
Exactly. The clinical perspective insists that these somatic or physical symptoms are entirely genuine. The stomach ache is not fabricated. The nervous system is hijacking the body to signal a lack of safety. If a child complains of a stomach ache for the 5th Sunday in a row, the sources argue they are communicating a profound psychological reality just through a physiological symptom.
Okay, I mean, I understand the biology of a fight or flight response, but I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who is currently in the trenches of parenting.
Fair enough.
Because when you're staring down a math test on a Monday morning, it is incredibly tempting to look at a complaining child and think, you just want to stay home and play video games.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's like a car engine revving so high that the steering wheel starts shaking. The shaking is a real physical symptom of an internal pressure. But as a parent, how do we distinguish between normal kid reluctance and an actual neurological anxiety response?
Well, the distinction really lies in the pattern and the severity. The clinical guidance points out that normal reluctance doesn't typically result in chronic, localized physical pain.
Right, or that persistent Sunday night insomnia over several weeks.
Exactly. If it is happening for the 5th consecutive Sunday, the repetition of the pattern is the diagnostic clue.
Ah, okay.
A child trying to get out of a math test might negotiate, but a child in the grip of pediatric anxiety is experiencing an involuntary nervous system override.
So they literally can't help it.
Right. The body is sounding an alarm that the child cannot turn off simply by deciding to be brave.
Wow. So validating the stomachache actually de-escalates the Sunday night crisis?
Yes, exactly.
Because if the pain is real, I mean, our instinct as parents is often totally counterproductive. If my kid is crying with a stomachache, my immediate reflex might be interrogation, right?
Why are you crying? What is happening tomorrow? Who was mean to you?
Exactly. Or honestly, worse, I might dismiss it completely and just say, you're fine, go to sleep.
Which is the worst thing you can do. But the sources outline a very specific tactical de-escalation playbook designed to lower the cognitive load on a child who is already in fight or flight.
And the focus of that playbook is basically validation over interrogation, right?
Yes. The guidance outlines a series of gentle steps, and the very first is naming what you see without judgment or demand.
Yeah, the specific phrasing recommended in the clinical sources is, it seems like Mondays feel big right now.
It's so simple.
I noticed that specific phrase in the material, and it is brilliant because it removes the demand for articulation. You aren't forcing an 8-year-old to explain the unexplainable nuances of their social or academic anxiety.
Right, you are just acknowledging the weight of it. And that leads directly to the second step, which is asking only open-ended questions.
Because yes or no interrogations just make a highly anxious child feel cornered.
Exactly. And then the third step requires you to validate the physical symptoms directly. You have to reiterate to the child that you believe their stomach hurts.
Right.
Because if you tell them they are faking it, you are effectively gaslighting their nervous system.
Oh, wow. So you're telling them that the very real pain they feel in their gut is illegitimate.
Which exponentially increases their anxiety. Now, they're not only dreading the school environment, but they also feel entirely alienated from their primary caregiver.
Leaving them completely isolated with their distress.
Exactly. And the final step in this gentle approach is to normalize screening. When you transition to seeking professional help, the framing is crucial.
Yeah, you present it to the child as simply checking in rather than using heavy terminology about getting a diagnosis or implying something is broken within them.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If you are listening, you might assume that by validating the stomachache, you are giving the child a get-out-of-jail-free card to skip school.
Yeah, that's a common fear for parents.
Right, but the mechanics of validation work differently. By validating the stomachache, you aren't giving them permission to avoid life. You are just acknowledging the check engine light on the dashboard so you can actually pop the hood.
Yes. You pop the hood and fix the real problem rather than just putting duct tape over the warning light and hoping the engine survives the commute. And that validation brings the child's nervous system out of an isolated state of threat, which is really the first necessary condition for any actual therapeutic intervention to work.
I love that quote from the sources on this exact dynamic. It says, "You are not overreacting. You are listening." That's exactly what they need.
It's so powerful.
It is. But come Monday morning, that child still has to walk through the school doors. I mean, empathy at home doesn't magically rewire the nervous system's response to the classroom environment.
Sadly, no.
A parent's validation is the first step, but it doesn't cure chronic clinical anxiety. And historically, popping the hood meant calling a clinic, getting put on a wait list for 3 months, and dealing with an absolute logistical nightmare while the Monday meltdowns just continued unchecked.
Right, and that systemic gap between recognizing the need for clinical help and actually receiving it, that is the exact window where the cycle of chronic absenteeism takes root.
Yeah.
A family loses momentum, the child misses more school, and the anxiety about returning just compounds.
But the sources highlight that bridging this gap no longer requires enduring a months-long wait list, which is huge. The transition from home-based empathy to professional intervention can start immediately. There is a validated free self-screener available right now at reachtherapy.com, Whole Mental Health Tests. It literally takes 2 minutes to put actual clinical data behind the behavioral patterns you are seeing at home.
Right, and that screener acts as the entry point to the systemic solution we introduced earlier, MentalSpace School.
Right.
For anyone reviewing the program details alongside us, their platform is at mentalspaceschool.com. or they can be reached at mentalspaceschool@reachatherapy.com.
And this initiative represents a massive shift in infrastructure, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is a comprehensive K-12 mental health ecosystem deployed across Georgia that provides same-day teletherapy to students.
So wait, what does this all mean for the actual school day? If a kid is melting down in the hallway or sitting in second period completely paralyzed by panic, how does a teletherapy platform physically interrupt the cycle of chronic absenteeism?
Well, it fundamentally changes the timing of the intervention. By providing same-day access, MentalSpace School allows the clinical intervention to happen at the absolute peak of the crisis.
Ah, okay.
Consider the traditional model, right? A student experiences severe anxiety in October, the school refers them out, and they finally sit down with a therapist in December.
Wow. Yeah.
By that point, the concept of state-dependent memory becomes a major hurdle. The child is sitting in a calm, sterile office, trying to recall how they felt during a panic attack 2 months prior.
So the therapeutic value is just severely diluted.
Exactly. Same-day teletherapy connects the child with a professional while the physiological and emotional distress is actually occurring. The support arrives before the student can completely disengage, pack their bags, and go home.
So they are processing the fire while it's burning, not analyzing the ashes weeks later.
Yes.
That makes a ton of sense. And since this is operating at a state level, I mean, we need to look at how this infrastructure integrates into the actual school environment. The footprint of this initiative covers all 159 counties in Georgia. It's massive.
Yeah, and it isn't just a basic hotline where a student gets a random operator, right? Schools receive dedicated therapist teams to build continuity.
Right, and the scope of services goes far beyond basic check-ins. The program framework covers acute crisis intervention, proactive suicide and violence prevention, family counseling.
Which directly supports the parents managing those Sunday scaries at home.
Exactly. And crucially, staff wellness. Because a healthy student body is impossible to maintain if the educators and administrators managing the environment are themselves experiencing severe burnout.
Oh, 100%.
But beyond the list of services, there is a specific methodology emphasized throughout the program's clinical framework regarding who is actually delivering the care.
Yeah, the sources specifically highlight that the program utilizes licensed, diverse therapists to provide culturally matched care. And this isn't just like a diversity metric, is it?
No, not at all.
It actually changes the mechanics of the therapy session itself. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the effectiveness of pediatric therapy relies heavily on minimizing the cultural load placed on the patient.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, when a child from a specific cultural background sits down with a therapist who shares or deeply understands that background, the therapeutic alliance forms rapidly.
Ah, I see.
The child doesn't have to spend the first 3 sessions explaining their community context, their family dynamics, or their cultural norms before they can even begin discussing their anxiety.
Right, so they remove the friction. I mean, in a same-day crisis intervention, where a clinician might only have 15 minutes to de-escalate a student who is ready to walk out the school doors.
You literally cannot afford to waste time building baseline cultural context.
Exactly. That immediate trust is the difference between retaining the student in class and losing them to absenteeism.
And the data from the sources suggests this rapid trust model is highly effective.
Yeah, the program data points are definitely worth exploring. The sources report an 89% improvement in attendance, a 92% reduction in anxiety, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
Those are incredible numbers.
They really are. Now, analyzing this objectively, if those numbers hold up at scale across all 159 counties, that 89% improvement in attendance fundamentally neutralizes the specific threat of chronic absenteeism we identified at the start of this deep dive.
It demonstrates a disruption of the negative cycle. If the clinical intervention successfully reduces the underlying anxiety by 92%, the somatic
The
symptoms,
stomach aches, the insomnia.
exactly, they naturally begin to dissipate because the nervous system is no longer trapped in a continuous fight or flight loop.
Right, but let's look at the systemic reality of public education and healthcare for a second.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, because a program can boast incredible success rates, but it means absolutely nothing if it hits the twin walls of the public sector, funding and compliance. Historically, this is where innovative clinical solutions die. If families can't afford the out-of-network fees, or if schools are tangled up in data privacy red tape, the teletherapy platform is useless.
The administrative and financial bottlenecks are usually the hardest to solve.
Totally. But the sources indicate that this initiative has basically re-engineered the billing landscape to remove those bottlenecks.
Yeah, they really did.
Instead of asking parents to navigate a maze of reimbursement forms, the program accepts all major commercial insurance plans. They specifically integrated Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, and Amerigroup.
That's practically everyone.
Right. And for Medicaid patients, the copay is $0. They essentially negotiated the financial landscape to ensure that a lack of funds is never the reason a student is denied a same-day intervention.
Solving financial accessibility is critical, but the legal compliance is often the definitive roadblock for school districts.
Oh, for sure.
Any educator or administrator knows that integrating a third-party medical platform into a school environment creates a massive liability regarding data silos.
Right, because medical privacy is protected by federal HIPAA laws, while a student's educational records are protected by strict FERPA laws.
Exactly. Blending those two data sets legally is usually a nightmare for a district.
Because the school is legally obligated to protect grades and behavioral records, while the clinic is legally obligated to protect psychiatric diagnoses. If the data crosses the wrong wire, it's a massive lawsuit.
Which is exactly why MentalSpace School built its platform to be inherently compliant with both HIPAA and FERPA simultaneously.
Oh, that's smart.
The medical data is walled off appropriately, while the necessary behavioral insights can still be coordinated with school counselors legally.
Okay, this raises an important point about the timeline for schools, particularly in Georgia. Districts aren't just casually browsing for mental health upgrades, right? They're actively operating under legislative pressure.
Yes. This raises an important question about state mandates. The sources note that this program provides specific support for HB 268 compliance.
And HB 268 is a state mandate requiring specific health, safety, and intervention protocols within Georgia schools.
Correct. And that legislation carries a strict compliance deadline of July 2026. District administrators are currently racing against the clock to find and implement comprehensive systems that check all of those legal boxes before the deadline hits.
So MentalSpace is essentially positioned as an out-of-the-box infrastructure that solves the timeline issue for districts. I mean, it's like they looked at every single excuse a district or a parent could possibly encounter.
The billing bottlenecks, the data privacy laws.
Right, the state legislative deadlines and the friction of cultural disconnects in therapy, and they just systematically dismantled them.
It is a fascinating case study in aligning clinical best practices with public sector logistics.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, analyzing both the neurology of anxiety and the mechanics of statewide healthcare deployment. So let's recap the through line of what we've learned.
Oh, good.
We started by looking at those Sunday night stomach aches, decoding the physical reality of the anxiety response. We learned that the nervous system uses somatic symptoms to signal distress, creating a highly predictable four-step pattern that culminates in the Monday morning meltdown.
And we examined the necessity of tactical de-escalation at home. By naming the child's struggle without demanding explanations, asking open-ended questions, and validating the physical reality of their pain, parents can lower the child's cognitive load.
Right, bringing their nervous system out of an isolated state of threat.
Exactly.
And from there, we bridged the gap from empathy to intervention. We explored how a 2-minute self-screener and the deployment of same-day teletherapy through Georgia's MentalSpace School can catch a crisis at its peak.
By removing the financial bottlenecks through major insurance and Medicaid integration and solving the complex HIPAA and FERPA compliance issues, they're providing a blueprint for turning Monday mornings back into normal school days.
Yeah, it serves as a powerful reminder that when mental health infrastructure is culturally matched and immediately accessible, the trajectory of a student's educational experience can be fundamentally altered.
It really can.
So, for anyone listening who recognizes the patterns of school refusal and somatic anxiety in their own household, do not wait for the symptoms to compound. You can access that free 2-minute validated screener right now at cheechtherapy.com/mental health tests.
Highly recommend checking that out.
And if you are an educator, a district administrator racing that July 2026 deadline, or just a parent in Georgia looking to understand this ecosystem, you can explore the complete K-12 program details at mentalspaceschool.com.
You know, we've spent this deep dive analyzing how pediatric anxiety speaks through bodies before it forms words, and how children inadvertently use physical pain to communicate distress their minds cannot yet process. But it leaves you with a lingering thought. If children manifest unspoken dread as stomach aches and Sunday night insomnia, what chronic unexplained physical symptoms are we as adults completely ignoring in our own bodies just to get out the door on Monday morning?